Well, welcome to the Honest EP podcast. We're the podcast for health professionals and the wider community, looking to explore diverse ideas in health, ask some hard questions, and have some honest conversations. My name is Archie. I'm an EP based on Sydney's Northern Beaches, and joining me as always is allied health business owner Andrew. Andrew, how are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm very well. Andrew, we're about to crack a beer, but we also have a guest. We'd like to introduce our guest.
We do.
Then we can crack the beer.
Who is also cracking a beer, which is lovely. We are very excited to have Michael Rizk joining us today. Mick, you have a very long CV and you do so many different things that I feel like I would do it an injustice to try and do it in 30 seconds. For those that don't know you, who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? I don't know how to, it sounds so existential. I'm a physio by trade, but that's not who I am. I actually did exercise science first. That was my first degree, which makes this conversation more interesting. Yeah. And I was convinced not to be an AEP by my lecturer, which we can get into. It's really interesting at that point. And then did the Masters of Physio. I practiced for 3 years in Sydney and opened my own physio clinics called iMove Physio, which is different to iMove You. People get that mixed up. iMove Physio are our clinics. We've got 4 or 5 clinics in Sydney. And then as I was transitioning from uni to private practice, I just started this Facebook group called iMove You, where we spoke about physio issues. So that's still going. Through that, the guys at the Physio Network podcast found me and said, do you want to host the Physio Network podcast? I'm like, hell yeah, I get to talk to like the best physios around the world, which was really cool. And about 3 years into business, when I knew we had no idea what we were doing, we found Clinic Mastery, who helped grow clinics for good. And that kind of culture and vibe really aligned with me. What I liked about Clinic Mastery is they weren't like super profit-centered like other business coaches. They spoke a lot about team and culture. So we got coached by a company called Clinic Mastery, and then they invited myself on to be a mentor with Clinic Mastery. So they're the 4 roles, and then Pokemon cards and cryptocurrency is probably my 5th and 6th job, which I could do a whole podcast on crypto if you want to have a financial episode.
It might be a bit of a one-sided conversation. It sounds like you need to crack a beer though, Nick, so we'll do it as well then.
Cheers.
What are you drinking today?
This is a James Squire from 2018, I reckon. It was really deep in the fridge.
Oh no.
What do you guys got?
Andrew's bought one for us today. What have you got us?
This is, I found this at the local IGA. It's called a Wanderer. I just got it because the can looks really good. I don't know anything about it.
It does look very good.
That is nice.
It seems to be, it's a Nomad collaboration with Sydney Brewery. I don't know if they mean like Nomad Brewery or they mean Nomad Restaurant, and if those are 2 different things, I'm not sure. But it's quite good. It's quite enjoyable. Very happy with it. Good.
Well done.
Good job.
Well done, beer. Well done, Nomad.
Well done, beer. There you go.
So, Mick, we sort of wanted to get you on to learn about this APA statement. Archie and I had done a podcast episode, a previous podcast, which was about the EP side of that story. And we're really curious, with all of the hats that you do wear and all of the voices that you hear, what's your take on the APA statement around the valuing skills and comparing physios to EPs?
Yeah, it's weird. I had like many takes, and I'm interested in the many hats and what we've heard, because I've heard a lot of different things from a lot of different people. Like, I think there's a business owner perspective. I think there's a physio perspective, an EP perspective. I got a feeling there's a GP perspective in here somewhere. My take on it, I posted a little bit on the iMoview Facebook group, but I was kind of confused. My first thought is like, why did they do this? And I'm still curious. Like, I wonder if it was just like a meeting one day and they said, we need to do a valuing skills series. And then someone said, let's talk about the differences between physio and EP. Or I wonder if it was more fear-based, like EPs are starting to like get more EPC referrals. And now on ground, when you get an EPC for physio, it might be like 2 physio and 3 EPs. Like that's something that's happening on ground, which I reckon might be part of this whole thing. Or I wonder if the AMA doctors and the medical profession were seeking clarity, and they're like, okay, so how do we provide clarity? So I don't know. I am really curious. My initial take is it did just feel scarcity. Like it didn't do what the title said. Like it didn't really value skills. It just tried to make comparisons without really talking about the skills. The main point seemed to be regulation, right?
Yeah, it did. I thought even the parts where they tried to provide a good summary of what physios do really well kind of reduced what I thought physios do into perform specific types of manual therapy and clinical exercise prescription. It's like, well, physios do way more than just that. And they've tried to summarize everything into 2 sentences. And I think they've ended up doing a disservice to both parties who they were trying to give a good comparison about.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what I mean. It didn't do the thing it set out to do, which was value skills. But the context is important. Like, I'm really curious what the thoughts were going into it. It might have just been it could be. I don't think it was. It might have just been like someone in marketing who had an attempt at it and it was terrible. Like, it might have just been a mistake or a fail. I wrote that as one of the things that could be a possibility. And also not to, I went into depth with, like, I don't want to bag the APA. Like, they have done, for the first time in my career, what the APA has done in the last 3 years, I was blown away. And I'm like, I'm so glad we have a professional body looking after us. And that's the power of a professional body, and to fight for us to be an essential service, and genuinely kept business owners and team members in work. So I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt and go, this was maybe just a balls up, but it didn't feel that way, did it? It felt kind of targeted and specific.
A little bit. And look, I peruse a lot of LinkedIn, and there's obviously a lot of EPs with pitchforks and torches out there. That's a little, it's quite angry and aggressive sometimes, and some of it's actually productive. But there's been one EP out there who got to a point where she tagged the board members of the APA in a LinkedIn post saying, hey, can we get an official statement on this from the APA, and then delete it and then collaborate on a new one. And they actually got a response from the APA on the LinkedIn post, which I thought was really, really interesting. And the response, I don't think it was quite what people were expecting, but it was, thank you for your concern. We apologize you took it this way. But what we're going to stand our ground on this one and go, this is what we meant to say. And I was like, oh, interesting. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting more of a, I don't know, some kind of, not an apology. I don't think that there'll be an apology of any sorts, but and we're open to collaborating on this, perhaps.
That's interesting, and well done to that person. I'm at least glad there was a response. That's good. Yeah, they stand their ground on this one. So it seems like they just really wanted to highlight the difference in regulation. So for them to say, oh, to stand the ground on this, they want to really highlight the regulation difference. So that's the other thought I have here is, why don't they just say what physios are without saying what EPs are? And why did they choose EPs and not every other allied health? That made it kind of interesting to me as well. Because you could just say we're physios and we're really well regulated and we have to meet all these standards and that's why we're awesome. Like that, it could have been that. No.
EP is a pretty kind of groundswell organization, I suppose. You know, we really stick together, and although some things have still got room for improvement, like we do band together pretty well when things like this happen. But it seems Physio is much bigger and much broader. Do you think the general physio community thinks that this statement is accurate? Like, I'm trying to gauge what the average physio is thinking about this.
Are you an EP, Andrew?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you do exercise science, then become accredited, and
Oh,
then did you do physio as well?
no, I did a Bachelor of Applied Science
Yeah.
in Health and Sports Science.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Oh, that was just a tangent question for me. Had nothing to do with what you asked. Sorry. What did the average physio think about it? Well, in my response, I said I didn't think it was fair. I thought it was scarcity mindset. I thought it didn't value skills. But I posed the question: was it accurate? So maybe you guys can tell me, because I thought when I read it, I'm like, is all of this true as far as the regulation? I genuinely don't know. So like what it said about EPs being regulated, I'm like, they're probably regulated differently under a different set of rules. But yeah, what's the truth in that part?
It's an interesting comment, because
Yeah.
I think factually it's pretty true what's in the
Yeah.
statement. I think there's nothing factually incorrect about it. It's the way that it was delivered.
Yeah.
The perception that the average punter on the street would take away from it.
In terms of like the regulation thing, instead of APRA, there is the other national accredited therapy body. I can't remember what the exact thing is. We mentioned on our last podcast. But it's for some of the other therapies that don't fall into the APRA regulations. And I think we chatted about it on our last podcast, but the main reasons for that we came across was more about like, well, we don't need to be APRA regulated for the reasons of like, not necessarily needing that level of insurance or that level of regulation to provide exercise or those forms of therapy. And then in the statement, instead of saying that EPs don't fall under the rules of or these regulatory rules under APRA, they just say they're not regulated under national law, which is just hilarious to word it that way. Like, we're just not regulated under any laws in the nation is how it came across. I thought that was just a fucking great way to just put a charge forward there.
Under national law. Yeah, like I don't even know what that means. What does that mean?
Comes across in a funny way. And then the other things they say, which look is technically true. Like we do provide distinct forms of exercise to help people with chronic conditions. Like, yeah, that's absolutely right. I'm just not quite sure what distinct forms of exercise are, to be honest, as opposed to what was written in the other section describing what physios describe as clinical exercise prescription, as opposed to EPs providing distinct forms of exercise. I'm unsure of why the wording is changing here between these two different things, which are both technically true, but they're just kind of weird ways of wording the same thing. To make one sound like something and one sound like something else, which is an interesting way to talk about it.
Yeah, I think we can only assume, but it feels like when you read those things, the assumption is that it was targeted and not like an honest mistake or without intent. The regulation piece is interesting though, because you can be regulated. Like you can be a physio and be regulated and still do really poor practice. And you can be unregulated and do amazing practice. So I don't really think on ground that actually holds the standard or holds any weight. Because I know physios do some stuff that's, not in best practice. And I'm sure it's the same in every profession. And then I'm sure in EP, not being under APRA, there's still wonderful evidence-based professionals.
You also get EPs doing absolute trash as well.
I'm sure. Yeah.
It's not about like the profession so much as the individuals at the end of the day who you're seeing. And then I almost, for a lot of things, I'm referring to a person rather than a profession a lot of the time, because you get good eggs and bad eggs no matter what job you do.
Do you think the statement was for patients or for the profession or for the medical body? I'm really curious who the target audience was, because is a patient going to read that? I don't even know how they attempt to get that out into the universe, but I don't see that much stuff from the APA, and I'm part of it all. Like, I don't. What do you guys think? Do you think it was actually meant for? There's three options. It was for patients, and if a patient read that, I don't think they would know. Like, I don't even think they would read into that. If it was for the profession, maybe it's like, maybe they're being lobbied by physios, and they're like, this will make it seem like we're helping physio, and like we want to be seen to be helping and lobbying for physio. Or maybe I wonder if it was for a higher body, like the medical body or doctors saying, hey, what's the difference? What do you guys have any inkling on that?
Oh, I feel like it's the medical body one. Like, it's the way it's worded only really makes sense to me to be for a medical body or for GPs, that sort of thing, in terms of like hey, you've got 5 EPCs sessions,
Yeah.
how do you decide where you send them as a GP? It's like, well, look at this, and
I'm going to send you to the regulated one.
Yeah, send to one who have to abide by national laws.
National law, yes. They won't end up in jail.
Yeah, exactly. Can't see EPs, they're all in jail anyway, right?
Yeah.
Running away. Yeah. So that would make sense to me, that it would be for GPs, which then to me makes the language and the points they made make more sense, because they've tried to summarize things into quick, short things, which GPs love, right? Like, they just want the shortest quick stop points of all the answers. So that makes sense to me. I don't know, Andrew, what do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't think it's for the general public. And like you said, I don't know how you would disseminate this out into the public domain, because it's kind of an odd document to like leave in GP waiting rooms.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there's going to be a follow-up here, because from the correspondence that's come out, it's been like, this is part of a series on valuing skills.
What's next?
I wonder who they're going to go.
I'd love to see them do physio versus chiro, and see an absolute war start, because that's a war much older than physio versus EP.
Yeah,
I would love to see that and be a bystander in that one, because I have no connection to it. It'll be great. It'll be wonderful to watch. Mick,
it would be.
To any other physios in your network and heard their opinions on it?
I think the active ones generally agree with what we're saying. I've noticed more the ones who aren't saying anything. And that I think that gives me a feeling that potentially there are some underlying tensions, and that they do want to be separated, and they do want to have lobbying for, this is what we do really well, and this is what EPs do really well. And so maybe it appeased some part in them that's like, well, it's really good to see the APA fighting for us. That's my sense. I've had no one say that to me. But again, it's like, I get to speak to such a large spectrum. Like, I get to speak to grads every day. I get to speak to my mid-career physios every day. And then I get to speak to business owners. So, no, I haven't spoken to a lot of people about it. Then the ones I have generally been like, I didn't really understand it or why they did that.
Physios, because it would be rare to find an EP at the moment who isn't aware of this, because EPs are the ones who probably reacting most emotionally to it. Are physios aware of this?
We've got 15 team members. I'd say 11 of them are like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then there's been 3 or 4 conversations where they don't know. I've said, have you been across this? And they're like, no, I haven't. I think it's Instagram. I think it's an Instagram thing. I think if you're following 2 or 3 or 4 of like the big pages on Instagram, or the more modern pages, then you know about it. So it probably comes down to who you follow.
Yeah. I saw Meakin's post post about it, which I was like, oh, we're leaving the country, and he's looking at the Australian Physiotherapy Association from a different country.
He's an EP anyway, isn't he? Isn't Adam an EP?
Yeah. Just get strong,
Doesn't he do the physio without the hands on? Isn't that He's gonna give me shit after this.
Yeah. That's right. Then we'll get Adam Meakins on the podcast, and he can talk.
Line us up.
That'd be great. Have you talked to any other business owners about it? Whether physio, EP, whatever, and are they aware of it?
Yeah, yeah. A few, like my wife Saranga showed me it. So she's a fellow business owner in a physio clinic down here in Melbourne. Yeah. The business owners are aware of it, and I think it's interesting because what you said, I try and read things with my different brains in. Like I tried to come back to it the next day and read it in a completely neutral tone. Like, when you read something and you're like, this is spiteful, and you make the voice up in your head. And then like the second time I read it, I'm like, oh yeah, like my question was, is that factually correct? Which I was asking you guys, like, yeah, like I know that part's true about physios, but I don't know if this part's true about EPs. I wonder if the reaction, if you didn't have the EP reaction, like you were saying, Andrew, the EP community is really tight and it was a really strong reaction. I wonder if most physios would have just looked at that and gone, oh yeah, like that's what it is. I think the reaction from the EPs has actually brought it up and had more people talking about it and then polarizing it, which is good. Like, that's good. But I think if that didn't happen, I reckon a lot of physios would just looked at it and go, oh yeah, we're regulated. They're not regulated or unregulated or breaking national laws every day. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. It's probably hard to know, isn't it? What would have happened?
As I don't know if you, Andrew, you can separate your EP brain from your business owner brain and look at something like this. As someone who employs physios and EPs, if you saw this statement, not having an EP background, what do you think your opinion or view would have been on it?
I think perhaps similar to Mick, what he said before about trying to understand this from who is the intended audience for this, because yeah, we've covered that already, but I don't quite understand why this exists. I think it would hold a lot more weight if there was collaboration on like a joint statement on what differentiates the professions. But then the challenge is that this statement obviously tries to draw a line between what one profession does and what another one does, and in reality we know that doesn't exist, that there's a huge overlap between what a physio that takes an active approach to treatment and what an EP does. Like there's a huge overlap. So my EP brain says, like, the APA can say whatever they want. I don't really give two shits. I'm still going to go and like work with our referrers and our GPs and things like this and say, well, this is what Rebound does. This is what, as an EP, we do. And they know what we do because we've done it for a long time, and they'll continue to refer to us for that reason. Similarly, if the Chiro board came out with a statement, or the Speech Pathology Association came, like, say whatever you want. Like, when it comes to what it is we do day to day, like, the people that trust us and the people that know us will know that we do things, and we do things a certain way.
We do things.
We do things.
It's a good point. Like, does it change any reality for our patients coming into the clinic? And one, will they see it? And if they see it, would it change anything? Because generally, yeah, people will see someone they know, like, and trust, and that's that. It really doesn't matter your profession at that point. Conversely, I wonder if there's a patient that's seen this who rings up and cancels their EP appointment. I wonder, like, do you reckon there's anyone? Do you reckon there's anyone out there? That'd be really interesting.
I'm going to say yes, because there's enough of this out there on Instagram and LinkedIn that read it and go, oh fuck, well, I might as well just avoid the controversy and go with the safe option.
They'll get confused.
They'll get very confused, and confusion leads to changes or making weird decisions, right?
Yeah, it's a good point. It'd be really interesting. I'd love to hear if anyone listening has had someone cancel their appointment and cite this, that I read about the regulations.
I mean, I have, like, no matter how hard I try to tell some of my clients that my job title is exercise physiologist, some of them still refer to me as their physiotherapist.
Mhm.
And because they just don't understand that they're two different words. And because like physiologists and physiotherapists are so close to people who don't do the things anyway and aren't medically that it's just fucking mumbo jumbo anyway. And they go, oh, I go to this person and they help me with my things, with my health. And it's like, cool. I'll remind us like, exercise physiologist. They cool physiotherapy, great. I was like, oh fuck, why do I even bother at this point? It's like, it's unbelievable. It just goes round and round in circles. I mean, never get anywhere with it. What I think is really interesting is to be honest, I don't think it. I think APA and to agree, it's probably ESSA as well, are probably barking up the wrong trees in that they're trying to quantify and say what the different professions do. But every EP and physio practices so differently that I don't think you can summarize a whole profession like our ones in a 2-page document, because the I Move physios and the physio clinic down the road are doing drastically different things, like significantly different things, that the entire experience from walking in the door to sitting down with the practitioner to leaving is completely different. And you would not know a lot of the time that they're the same profession because you do completely different things. And it's the same in EP. Like you could come in to see one EP and you would leave with a drastically different experience to a different clinic who's had the same training just down the road. So for the professional bodies to try and compare between different professions, like they're at a point where they'd be able to do the comparisons between their own profession just in people who are working off different evidence bases. They do better to try and educate their entire profession and bring up the level of care across physios and across EPs, because it's fucking wild out there. Like I talk to EPs, or I get handovers from the EPs in different cities and stuff. They're like, what the fuck are you doing? It's like, why have you been doing calf raises for 9 months for this personal work cover for a lower back injury? What are we doing here? And I'm sure that happens in physio as well, Mick. But like, I don't know, what are some crazy things that you've heard from physio clinics down the road? Or is that a little too, like, can you even talk about that?
Yeah, I guess it comes down to like philosophical belief as well. But there's still physios who put you on a machine for half an hour, put you on ultrasound or e-stim or whatever that might be. There's still physios with really what I would consider like really biomedical beliefs, like you have this problem because of this structure. I would say more nocibic than where we sit on the spectrum. And I think over servicing would probably be the other big thing, is like we'll get patients that have been seeing someone once a week for a really, really long time with seemingly no discharge criteria or date. Which it sounds like the same. It sounds like the same in all professions.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. One of my mates who I live with, had an acute shoulder injury and went to see a physio and came home. I was like, oh, how'd it go? It's like, yeah, great. They've taped my back. And I was like, oh, show me. And they literally put 2 bits of strapping tape just in a little cross between his shoulder blades, and then gave him a ball to roll his lat on one side because they diagnosed scoliosis. I was like, and that was the treatment plan for his shoulder injury. I was like, wait, what? So they taped your back and given you a ball to roll your lat, and told you have scoliosis. I was like, dude, go to a different physio.
Yeah, wild. I mean, I've been thinking so much about that, like what we hear. I'm curious about that. Is there a possibility that was actually a wonderful consult? Or is there a possibility that was the worst consult and they said you've got scoliosis and all the nocibic stuff and I'll put K-tape on you? And that's maybe it's something we can get into later, but there's something in there that that gets translated to online, I reckon.
Hmm.
That it I wonder if they gave all these beautiful explanations, narratives that we're going to get you out of this. It's going to be, you'll be fine. There's no red flags here. Your body's strong and robust. We'll do X, Y, and Z. We'll get you nice and strong. But the takeaway was a bit of K-tape and a ball.
Exactly.
Or it could have been the worst consult ever. Like, who knows?
The thing was, like, he came away and he was like, yeah, that was really good.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting. Yeah. What did he say why he thought it was good?
It was
Just
like,
felt good.
He was a nice guy, seemed to help.
Yeah.
Gave me some things to do. I was like, cool, great. And I said the tape would work, and I believed it. I was like, okay. Look, it probably will, given enough time to recover, and it probably will end up working. And we'll go from there, I guess. It's like,
he abided by national law.
That's it. Yeah, didn't break any national laws, so he's okay there. Oh dear. What I think the national bodies need to do is to invest more time and energy and money into upskilling their own professions across the board. I know for one that the amount of shit courses that you get sponsored content for from ESSA emails is like, why are we peddling these shit courses and encouraging more EPs to do these, pay hundreds of dollars to go backwards in clinical understanding of evidence. And
what are those courses like? I don't see too much on the ESSA side.
Oh, like,
you don't name them, but what would they teach?
Look, some of the greatest ones I've seen is like a 2-day course on broomstick mobility.
Okay.
That's like, great. Or, fascial lines, 2-day course.
Yeah. Similar to physio.
Similar.
Okay.
Still peddling like FMS, prevent injury with doing your FMS things. Okay. Like, all right, can we move on from that and put some better education? Because I feel like I can look at those emails and look at the course description and go, no, I don't want to do that because I know what they're going to try and teach me straight away. But you get to October and EPs are ready to throw $1,000 at whatever email they get. I imagine the course instructors just pay ESSA to have it sponsored. And there isn't really, a deep dive into how clinically relevant or how research backed the courses are. But I figure this is the same across professions.
Yeah, absolutely. There's still a lot of like passive therapy courses. They're probably, I don't know, you guys can tell me, they're less relevant for EPs, but like, I know physios still use a lot of passive modalities, so they'd be interested in it. Like dry needling is a classic. I'm still surprised at how, not from employers, but I'm still surprised by how many grads come to me and say, should I do my dry needling course? Like that's, and this is interesting because like I have no issues with manual therapy. And then I challenge myself and I'm like, I have no issues with manual therapy if used the right way. Why would I have a problem with dry needling? This is a question I was chatting with someone about the other day. It's like, if we think soft tissue is okay, provided we use it in the right way, we're not saying it's changing things. We're not saying this is your fix and it's a bit of short-term pain relief if it is that. Then, and is it possible that dry needling does the same, but why are we so harsh against dry needling, which I have been too? So just challenging our thoughts on that. One of the answers was the risks, like there's a higher risk with something like that. That makes sense. So I wonder the same, how do you guys feel about more passive modalities as an EP? Like, is there any part where they're helpful? Like doing the broomstick stuff, would you be sweet with that if it was less and only like 2 hours of your time and it's like a nice thing to know? Or is it like, we don't need that stuff?
Personally, like I am all for manual therapy in the right context. And that's because I think it feels good. Personally. So, and I would like to have some manual therapy in situations as well. And I know that it feels good. So why would I, who am I to take that away from people who enjoy doing something? So I'm all for it. And I think there is definitely a place for it with the right narrative. And if someone has expectations of seeing a physio and they go, hey, dry needling has felt really good for me in the past when I've had this injury, can you do some dry needling with me? Or can you do some form of passive therapy?
Yeah.
I think the physio in that situation, could do a great job by meeting their expectations there, providing them some passive therapy that they want, and then add some good education, some movement, active-based therapy on top, and probably get like awesome outcomes for that person. There are definitely some zealot EPs who are like, we should just not be rubbing or touching or needling or doing anything to any people. I was like, cool, okay, so never get a massage or never get manual therapy ever again. See how you feel. There's probably going to be a time in your life when you really wish you didn't say that. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. If I'm going to a physio or a chiro or whoever, I would expect some things to happen in that session, and I'd probably be a bit disappointed if it didn't, and I'd probably go and find someone who would do those things, because like you said, it feels good, and that's kind of what I want to feel walking out from those sessions.
We're going to pause it right there with Mick. In part 2, we're going to come back and talk more about advice for new grads and social media. So look forward to that. And then we've got a part 3 coming as well. See you later.